What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV, aka Darth Apocalypse. All right, so before I get into this video, shout out to the brother Jeremy Tyler for the $20 donation via the PayPal. He says, "Salute to Raw. Who are you taking in today's NBA, Jason Kidd or John Stockton?" And well, I already pretty much have the guy who I'm leaning toward in my head, and that would be John Stockton. And I think it's for the obvious reasons. We're in an offensive NBA, and as great as Jason Kidd was as a passer slash playmaker, floor general, facilitator, Stockton's right there. Arguably, he's the more prolific playmaker. He's the all-time leader in assists. And although I think Jason Kidd is the better on-ball defender, Stockton was not shabby in that area in his career at all. Matter of fact, I believe he made some all defensive second teams in his career, and he's the all-time leader in steals. So Jason Kidd's strengths, for the most part, Stockton is right there. And the one area where I think Jason Kidd has a tremendous advantage over Stockton, which is rebounding. In particular, he was, Kidd's one of the great offensive rebounding guards we've ever seen, especially point guards. Stockton was not a great rebounder, but that's something that could be rectified as far as your roster is concerned. You have guys who can rebound the basketball, to make up for that. But to have a point guard like Stockton playing this era, where he would be more encouraged to shoot, would be very interesting. Now, of course, neither one of them were what you would call on the move scorers. Like, Stockton's not a guy that's going to have the ball in his hands and ISO and, a lot and just, pull up for, Jays. And I mean, he could do it, but, Stockton was more of a pass first point guard. He didn't have the greatest schoolyard handles. I guess I'll put it like that, right? So in that aspect, he wouldn't be the flashiest guy in the NBA, but I still think that he would lead the NBA in assists. And instead of giving you maybe 12 points a game, he would give you more around 18, maybe even 20 points a game. I still think that he would not be you know, a guy that's like a ball hog or anything, but I think he would be more encouraged to shoot. And Stockton was, I believe, a 38% career three-point shooter. Kids like 35%, 34%, I think, 34%. Um, Jason Kidd really did not have much of a mid-range shot. Now, granted, they don't take that shot a lot in today's NBA. Stockton is not as strong as Kidd. Kidd was a little bit bigger, obviously, so that's an asset. But I would still go with Stockton just because he's a better scorer and he's more efficient. Stockton, for his career, even though he was 6'1", 170, shot 51% from the field. Whereas Jason Kidd shot 40% and had some seasons in the upper 30s. I can't overlook that. I can't. He's one of the worst shooting point guards of all time. And as great as he was, as far as with his playmaking and defense and rebounding and everything else that made up for it, and his floor generalship and his basketball IQ and everything else that made up for it, the shooting in today's league would be a big problem to me. It would be a problem. You have to build a roster specifically to, you know, counter his offensive deficiencies. Now, he was a guy, from what I can recall, that, especially, I remember he used to like to take that transition 3-pointer at the top of the key. Um, that was one of his favorite shots to take. He shot it with regularity, and Kid made a lot of threes. He made more 3-pointers actually in his career than John Stockton did. He just wasn't as efficient. And Stockton was a guy that could, score in traffic. Uh, he was a guy that he was always trying to take the most efficient shot out there. And that's why he shot 51% from the floor for his career. That's why Stockton in 93, I think it was, one of those years, 92 or 93, he actually shot about 55% from the field as a point guard. Plus, people can say, well, look, Stockton was on fewer All NBA teams, right? And, Kid got a championship. But Kid won that championship as a role player. Okay? A solid role player, but he was a role player. And for some reason, Jason Kidd gets more credit for his championship than Gary Payton does for the Miami Heat. Even though I would argue that Payton might have been even more effective as a role player that year as a champion than Kidd was, at least for most of the year. But I don't know. And I forgot what the hell my point was about. What the hell was my point going to be? Oh, yeah. Stockton didn't make as many All NBA selections as Jason Kidd. But you also got to look in the era in which Stockton played. He played in an era in which you had guys like Magic Johnson. He played in an era where you had guys like Tim Hardaway and Kevin Johnson and Fat Lever. It went into the era of guys like Gary Payton and Penny Hardaway. So what I'm saying is he played against a lot of competition at the small forward and guard position. Clyde Drexler, Michael Jordan. If you're talking about in the Western Conference, Clyde Drexler, uh, you know, Magic Johnson, like I said, Fat Lever, Eric Floyd, Purvis Short, um, so many different players at the one or two that was taking, all NBA selections that could have went to Stockton, whereas Kidd kind of played in an era where a lot of those guys were either diminishing or retiring or, they were just coming of age, like as far as T-Mac and some of these other guys in the early 2000s. So I would definitely take John Stockton. I think that his skill set fits more into this era than Kidd's. Kidd's fits more into the era in which he excelled in, which was the dead ball era. But anyway, that's all I got to say about it. Tell me what you guys think.
Too raw for TV.